What do I mean by dialogue? Well, first of all, I'm influenced most recently over the last few years more by Bakhtini's notion that we are dialogical beings, that we live with each other, we swim in life in dialogue, and that dialogue is the way that we express ourselves with others, with ourselves, and that we do that in many, many ways. We do that through what we think of as the spoken language or words, and that we do that with our bodies in many ways, whether that's through a particular feeling or emotion or a glance or a nod, but various bodily expressions. So I think what I think of as this back and forth nature of dialogue. We're going back and forth with ourselves, we're going back and forth with other people in terms of sharing, in terms of contributing, in terms of offering to, if you want to use the word conversation or talk, in which we are in a process of what I think of as meaning making. Now, one of the things I think that often happens when we think of dialogue is that sometimes people punctuate something that this is dialogue and this isn't dialogue. So my own preference is to think of everything as dialogue, that we're always in a dialogical state. And using the language of continuum, that sometimes things are more dialogical and sometimes they're less dialogical. So sometimes we're in a more of a meaning-making process and sometimes we're in less of a meaning-making process. But I think of dialogue as the way that we are with each other as human beings. That's the way that we are. That's the way that we're built, and we have these unique languages. And I use language again in the broadest sense. Again, any way in which we try to articulate, express ourselves, communicate with another person. And then just now using the word communicate makes me think in terms of often people talk about communication and good communication and bad communication, and that we need to communicate, or you need to help this couple learn to communicate, or you need to help this mother and son learn to communicate, or you need to help this manager be able to communicate with his team. And one of the things that I experience, or maybe I should say one of the things that often catches my attention, is that communication is often used as almost as if it's a one-way street, that it's something one person does clearly, and that if you're clear enough, you choose the right words, the right tempo, etc., that you will be able to give the other person what you want to give them in your words, whether it's words, spoken words, words on the pages of a book, or even in one's actions, because our actions do, quote unquote, say something. And it's as if you can instruct the other person, instruct them, influence how they're going to hear, the meaning they're going to attribute to what it is that you are trying to say, or how you're trying to express yourself. And so then if I come back to dialogue, it's more of this, what I think, this in there together, this back and forth, this give and take, and that it's something that we're doing together, and that I never know if you are understanding what at least I think I'm trying to convey, and having the same understanding that I do, or exactly what kind of sense you are making of it. I think we can never reach that point. We can only, I think, temporarily pause and say, we think we're understanding each other. I think I understand you. We think we're on the same page. So you can't put an understanding or meaning into another person's head. It begins to form in the space between us as we're each contributing. Often with dialogue, people think in terms of the spoken word. And I think dialogue or talk or conversation is also something that we do with ourselves or with the imagined others or the relational others that we carry around with us. And that those more silent or inner conversations or talk are as important and sometimes more important than the out loud talk. So for example, as I was saying, as I'm in this kind of, I guess you could say, privileged position in this room of being the one who has a lot of space to talk, that you're interacting with what I'm saying. And you are bringing your experiences, you're bringing your pre-understandings to what I'm saying, and you are each creating something. Now, and what you're creating or the meaning making that you are doing or in the process of does not necessarily mean that it's a new piece of knowledge or that it's a new product, so to speak, but that you're doing something that's unique for you in these moments that we're together. And then of course as other people come in and as you're talking with each other, as other people ask questions, you're doing the same thing. So we're always in these processes. Although sometimes we're occupied by something and we may not have as much or as rich a self-talk or inner dialogue as we might have in other occasions. So for me in my work, it's important to have these listening and speaking positions. In other words, to take time that I think to pause, to step back, and to have the time to reflect, to have the time to have these inner conversations, our own interactions with what it is that we think that we've heard. We can't really pinpoint specifically what we're creating. So it's, for example, if we had a room full of artists here, and the task was to sketch this table and the objects on top of it. We would have, whether there are 14 of us in the room, we would have 14 versions. Because although it is seemingly one thing, or one group of things that we're looking at, we're each looking at it differently. If we were to switch chairs, when we come back in this room after lunch and we were to sketch it again, it would continue to look differently. So it's like in dialogue, for me, everything's always in motion. It's very fluid. It never is really at a standstill, although it seems sometimes that things are at a standstill, that things are stuck or they're not moving as quickly as we think they should be, because we have these ideas, these pre-understandings that we bring to any one event or occasion or relationship, etc. in our lives as to how that should be, how it should look like.